10 worst champions you should avoid going into patch 11.22, League of Legends. Have you ever been a long-time League of Legends player? Want to level your game up? You've clicked on the right video. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 worst champions you should avoid going into patch 11.22. Now let's get right into the video. Renekton has been the safest top lane option in the competitive League of Legends scene for the previous 2 seasons. Since the nerfs to his Call the Meek in patch 11.18, he has witnessed a considerable decline in his victory rate. Riot appears to have intended to weaken Renekton to prevent him from being selected during the current League of Legends 2021 World Championship, making the top lane meta even more intriguing. Renekton, with his aggressive all-in playstyle, might be one of the champions to utilize in the first new Strike Keystone. This buff came as a complete surprise to many people. Did this buff come as a surprise to you? Are you shocked to hear that? Comment down below what you have to say about this pick. Number 9 is Lucian. Our next pick is Lucian. Let's go over his abilities before we move on to why you should avoid him. He possesses the Light Slinger. After casting an ability, Lucian's next basic attack fires an extra shot after 0.25 seconds, doing 50, 55, or 60% AD physical damage depending on level, raised to 100% AD versus minions. The second shot is influenced by critical strike modifiers and applies on-hit and on-attack effects at 100% effectiveness. Lucian will automatically shoot another adversary in range if his initial target is slain before the second shot can be fired. We understand that Lucian's a vexing selection, and he can dominate just about everyone you play against in the game. He is, however, particularly vulnerable to ganking. If you go in for deals, you're basically forcing people out of the way, whether you like it or not. Any jungler with even a smidgen of a brain could figure out how to go to the top lane. And after you die, you lose all the pressure you felt during your early game. And your lane opponent should have a few levels by now. Always keep one thing in mind that is important. Lucian is utterly worthless if you've fallen behind on him. What are your opinions on this pick? We would love to know. Number 8 is Olaf. A famous pick in the jungle is Olaf, with abilities like Undertow, where the axe is hurled in a specific area, doing physical damage to all foes it passes through and slowing them to 1.5 to 2.5 seconds. It is not a big surprise that he has made it on this list. Everything we have previously mentioned about Renekton can be applied to Olaf as well. Since Olaf's playstyle is basically to run down carries and heal through all the damages you have taken, he has to be pretty much ahead to even stay relevant. Once he has acquired a decent lead in the early part of the game, he can force pretty hard in the mid-game. He's moving into the mid-game in a significantly weaker position because of Conqueror and Gore Drinker nerfs. All we can say is that you should avoid getting into this. Number 7 on this list is Yumi. World Championship highlighted a big problem with the Magical Cat. The character was too powerful, and had a significant impact in the game's meta. Yumi has been on the run recently in terms of her pro community's use of the character. When she eventually made it through the drought selection process, the Magical Cat had a 53.3% victory rate at Worlds. Yumi was the world's top cat while also pawing at every high bitrate in the solo queue. Zoomies was singled out since it's one of the most aggravating characteristics in lengthier games, thanks to her early game advancements in patch 11.18. Also, it doesn't have to be as strong. Overall, these improvements should encourage Yumi to be more active and valuable to her friends in the lane, while making her foes less irritating later in the game. But with the cons exceeding the pros, we say you should avoid her. But the choice is yours. Number 6. Rumble. Rumble had a moment when he belonged to the opposite end of the spectrum. In practically every position, he's one of the most broken champions in the game. However, following a few slew of nerfs, this character's script has been inverted. He is no longer someone that you want to lock in as a jungler. In a solo lane, he defeats his opponents by bullying them out. This is due to his highly spectacular short trades. He doesn't represent much of a threat when it comes to prolonging fights in the jungle, and as a result, ganking commodities to establish lanes is exceedingly unlikely with him. Number 5 is Varus. With the lethality nerfs, Varus' piercing abilities were too strong, therefore he was given some power back to support his lethality playstyle, but at a lesser range than his Q. On-hit builds are still doing well on Varus, and it's virtually impossible to believe that this buff will send him over the top. This patch's buff is a good start, but Riot wants to promote Varus as a tank damage dealer, which only works if a squad supports you in combat. It makes sense, but in a one-on-one battle against other ADCs like Lucian, Caitlyn, Jinx, or Vayne, Varus has no choice but to try to ult and one-shot them or run and die. This perk is terrific, but it doesn't affect your victory rate. But even after the nerfs, it has been found that he's one of the most consistent picks in pro plays. He has now reached an utterly unviable state due to the continuous nerfs though. Number 4 is Ryze. Ryze has been one of the best and most consistent mid lane mages in the current meta. And with Worlds 2021 approaching, this nerf may cause him to fall out of favor. Ryze doesn't appear to be a horrible choice in theory. I mean, he has a decent gank setup, and after you reach 3 items, you can side lane quite effectively while doing massive amounts of damage. The fact that we're talking about right now is solo queue remains an issue. The early game never goes as planned, and Ryze might have a nice gank setup, but it means nothing unless you're precisely managing the wave. Number 3 is Vex. The nerfs to Vex weren't the only modifications done. With your choose your own champion version of Earth now accessible in the game, specific tweaks were necessary. Given how long it has been since the game mode was available and how many balancing improvements has been done since then, as a result, several champions have received buffs and nerfs. Vex possesses excellent laning, and team fighting is unquestionably one of the most impressive players to face. She has to go in, play about till she cools down, and Vex loses a lot of team fighting strength if she misses a reset. Her 2v2 presence is likewise significantly lower than one of the other mage supports. Even though Riot gets a lot of hate for its new champions, I think we all agree that Vex is an excellent addition. However, there are better picks available to you, so it would be wise to let this champion slide. 2. Pantheon. After his patch 10.25 decimation, Pantheon is getting further nerfs. While support Pantheon is no longer live as Riot intended, the top lane has landed a little too powerful. Therefore, his sustain has been nerfed. These are the champions who, like Vex, play the same job but are continuously beneficial. For tanky engagement support, Leona is almost always the best choice. She has a wide range of engaging assistance, and at her finest, she can make picks from halfway across the screen. But as we've already talked about before, there are a lot of better choices, so you might want to avoid Pantheon altogether. Number 1 is Aphelios. Aphelios has access to Alun's Moonstone weapons, which he invented with his sister. He only has 2 weapons on him at any one time, and one of his weapons is his primary weapon, and the other one is offhand. Each weapon's basic strike and passive effects are distinct. We're well aware of this ability, but his statistics have never been too remarkable. To attain mediocre outcomes, he must play with extreme expertise. As a result, outside of Master Plus levels of play, he's usually in the C or D tier. It's pretty difficult for him to obtain that point, plus it puts him on the list, so avoiding him might be a wise plan. But hey, that's a wrap for today's video. Thank you guys for staying with us until the end of the video, and stay tuned for such content. Alright, we'll see you guys real soon. Goodbye.